Hey, there, it's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks. Roberta. Roberta is a little girl waiting for a new heart. We became friends with Roberta and her mom during our weeks at Hope Haven. Sarah Beth and I, as Annie, had promised that we would come see her again. Once every week or two we would call her mom and sometimes get to talk to Roberta, too. It was one of those scary waiting games. Roberta was high on the list to receive a transplant because she was so seriously ill. Nobody knew for sure whether her tired little heart would last long enough. We had promised Roberta a bicycle after she got her new heart, since she enjoyed my bicycling antics so much. It became a symbol of hope for her, something to hang in there for. So on a Saturday soon after we got home, garage sale day, Sarah Beth and I rode around in my battered old Jeep, hoping to find a nice girl's bike that somebody outgrew. We didn't. We did find a hulk of a small girl's bike, missing a front wheel and lots of other parts, and a bent frame from being left in a driveway once too often. This has possibilities, I told Sarah Beth, carrying it to the Jeep door so she could see it. And it's only $1. There are rust spots, but none are deep enough to weaken the metal. That old wreck, my freckled fiancé asked. By the time you restore it, it'll cost as much as a new one. Probably so, but it will be more fun. And we can personalize it, make a custom machine for our little Roberta. We can work on it together, I pleaded. Well, okay, she grinned. Maybe that will be a true test of compatibility. Then she frowned, and I could almost see a tear start to form. But what if Roberta, never needs the bike? I touched her arm. I've thought about that, too. And I'm sure that we can find another little girl either in the hospital or really poor, who could use a bike built by love. You're on, then, Sarah responded. The funny thing is that I could hear two people talking just then. Two? What do you mean? I heard Mark, a good guy enthused about this big mechanical project, and Annie, who is so thoughtful, and has so much love to give. Now my eyes were moistening. I went to pay my $1, loaded the bike in the Jeep, and we drove off. I worked part-time in our town's bicycle shop since I was 16, and the owner let me come back, filling in for vacationing help. When I told him of my project, he agreed to supply parts to me at cost. Of course, parts weren't the big thing. Time was. Cleaning, sanding, straightening and welding, replacing bent spokes in the one wheel it had, repainting, took a bunch of hours. As much as possible we worked together on it. It was fun, though, and it gave us something else to focus on, something outside ourselves. We thought about how that had been true at Hope Haven and the hospital. People thought we were so wonderful for helping the other clients there, but we helped us as much as we helped them. It took our minds off ourselves. As we neared the end of August, we were nearly done with the reclamation. We were outside on a Sunday afternoon, adding a coat of wax to the bike. We heard the phone ring and ran inside. Sarah answered it. It was Mrs. Cameron, Roger's mother. I heard Sarah say, "That's wonderful news," and my first thought was that Roger's cancer was better. She's having the surgery now? Then I thought it might be Roberta. Sarah Beth confirmed it to me by mouthing Roberta and touching her chest. I jumped into the air and pumped my arm. Yes. Sarah said, "We'll try to come as soon as we can." Oh, yes. That's right. Well, by Thursday she should be able to have visitors, shouldn't she? We'll try to get there Thursday, then. I think Annie can come. She looked at me. I nodded. Yes, she can. As a matter of fact, she's right here. Yes, she'd love to talk with you. Mrs. C filled me in. Sadly, a little boy had been declared brain dead after a traffic accident in Kansas. Roberta was the closest matchup for him, and they flew the heart in. I grieved for the parents in Kansas, but was so glad that they had given permission for the organ donation. I had checked that box on my driver's license a long time ago, and now I was glad that I had. "How is Roger?" I asked in my Annie voice. I know that he didn't want us to come back and see him, but both of us would love to. I could see Sarah nod yes. It would be tough, because we know he had gone downhill, but we both cared tremendously for the lonely 14-year-old boy, so blessed by wealth but doomed by the growth in his head that the surgeons hadn't been able to remove. I put my free hand over my face and my chin quivered as she described his deterioration. "I see," I said finally. "And we're both so sorry for you and your husband. Is he there? Can I talk to him?" She agreed. I heard a noise. Like he was trying to say hello. Mrs. Cameron told me that he couldn't talk clearly anymore, but that he understood what was being said. "Roger? Hi. It's Annie, remember? Your date?" Another grunt, higher pitched. "Roger, we've been thinking about you so much. Praying, too." A softer grunt. I went on to tell him about how things had been going since we had gotten home, and about rebuilding the bicycle for Roberta. "Roger? I was telling a friend of mine just the other day about the wonderful date we had. I showed him pictures of me in that beautiful blue gown, and you in your tux. He was impressed, let me tell you. I'll never forget it. I was having trouble talking by this time. Sarah wants to say hello, so, goodbye, for now, Roger, but we'll call you, okay?" Sarah talked with Roger too, and then back to Mrs. Cameron. After she hung up, Sarah passed on to me the message that we wouldn't be able to see them when we drove over to see Roberta, because they were going home in 2 days. There was no more treatment they could give Roger. He probably only had a few months left. We both cried. What a roller coaster. Joy for our young friend Roberta, grief for our friend Roger. We decided what to take with us when we went, and on a plan to get me out of town looking like Mark and to our destination looking like Annie. Later in the week, we talked with Roberta's mother and told her about the bike. "She'll be delighted," she said. She reminded us though that we couldn't bring it with us on this trip, since Roberta would still be in the cardiac care unit, and her immune system would still be suppressed. So we snapped a roll of film of the bike. I dressed up as Annie for some of the shots, devoutly hoping that the neighbors would assume I was Julie, who had come home for a 2-week break between sports camps and college. I put a bandana on over my wig to cover my darker hair, and went out in a lavender short and top set. Once we were done with the pictures, I turned back into Mark and Julie put on the lavender set and the bandana. Yes, I shot film. No, I don't have a digital camera yet, missing most of my summer paychecks put that on hold. Julie made the trip with us, we rode in her old Honda. We still didn't want the people around Hope Haven or the hospital to see me and Julie together, so we were going to all share a motel room. Julie would go to hang out with some friends, and we would go to visit Hope Haven and Roberta. I left in gray shorts, cross trainers and white socks, and a big gray knit shirt that I had borrowed from my dad, monochromatic splendor. My hair was growing out since its last shave the night we had returned home, still short and bristly. In another week or 2 I'll have to trim the sides. Thank heaven, my eyebrows were starting to return, as well. They looked like charcoal smudges, but that was better for being Mark than delicately arched or shaved clean off. About 35 miles from Fort Russell, we pulled off into a national forest recreation area to eat our picnic lunch. We found a totally empty area. After our PB sandwiches, mine with jelly, both girls with bananas, we worked on me becoming Annie again. I had left home in my Annie undies, which were covered by my baggy shorts and shirt. Julie put my makeup on for me, since there wasn't a good mirror for me to do my own. Then I forsook my gray garb for a yellow flowered sundress, slipped off my trainers long enough to replace my athletic socks with ones that had little yellow balls at the top rear, put on my wig, and inserted hoop earrings with Sarah's help while Julie pinned a yellow ribbon into my curls. At my insistence, Julie and Sarah were also wearing flowered sundresses and ribbons, or red for Julie, light green for Sarah. We looked silly, but we looked silly together. We passed around a bottle of light red nail polish. It was time for Annie to try something different. On the road again, we had an easy trip into the city and to the hospital, getting there before afternoon rush started. Julie dropped us off and went to get our room at the hotel. We took the elevator to the cardiac care unit, and with the nurse's instruction, donned sterile gowns, masks, and caps. We turned the corner, and through the window saw Roberta, still tiny, laying in bed, attached to enough tubes and monitor wires to make me think of the Borg, but she still looked better. Vicky, Roberta's mom, had her back turned as we entered the cubicle roomlet. "Mommy. It's Annie and Sarah Beth." Vicky turned around and we hugged. Then we all leaned over to kiss her cheek through our masks. Even with all the hookups, Roberta looked better than she had before. It was her color, now pinker with her improved circulation. Under the sheet and gown, we could make out the bulk of the padding over her carved chest. But she still had that Roberta twinkle in her eye, and that Roberta giggle she gasped when she saw the bicycle as it was when we first brought it. Her eyes grew wide when she saw the pictures of the bicycle after we refinished it. "You're going to give that to me? I'll love it. And it's pink, just like the helmet you gave me. Will you come teach me to ride it, Annie?" I couldn't even remember where Roberta and Vicky lived, but I said, "Sure, I will. But you have to work hard at getting strong first. And take all your medicine, okay?" A nurse came in and smiled at us, but told us we would have to leave for an hour so Roberta could rest. Vicky walked us to the elevator and thanked us. "Our pleasure," I said. "See you in an hour." I didn't want to go down to physical therapy, because Kevin was uncomfortable with my gender switching. We did go over to Hope Haven, where Mrs. Verdugo was delighted to see us. Most of the kids that we had known had left by now. We were saddened to hear that Wendy, the girl with leukemia, had died. She and her mother never related very well to us. They were kind of withdrawn. It must be tough to die without friends. Mrs. Verdugo introduced us to a few kids and parents, and so we stayed around and visited a while. We went back over and got Roberta giggling as I told her really, really corny jokes and funny stories about what a silly little girl I was. That got Sarah Beth giggling, and she told some more about silly little Annie. Julie came by around 6:30 to pick us up for a late supper. We grabbed gyros at a Greek place and prowled some of the funky stores near the campus. The next morning after breakfast, we made 2 visits to Roberta and spent a little more time at Hope Haven. Then we went back to the motel. I changed back into being a guy, making sure that all the makeup and polish was removed. I went back to the hospital, by myself this time, while the girls went their own way, and went in to meet Kevin. I knocked on his door. He was seated at his desk, clipboard in hand, making notes. "Sir?" I asked. "I'm a senior in high school and am interested in going into physical therapy. I understand that you're the person I should talk to." "Certainly, come in." Mark, sir, Mark Jansen." "You look a little familiar," he said. "We haven't met, have we?" "Wait. It's Annie, isn't it? I hardly recognized you." We had a good conversation, and he made some recommendations for courses that I should take in my senior year, and contacts I should make in admissions and scholarships. Later, we were on our way back to Fort Russell, 2 girls and a guy. For the time being, anyway. Please subscribe for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.